So the last step in our application is actually handling the add item to order. Now this part gets a little tricky. It's tricky because we need to be able to identify the product that was selected, and we need to actually be able to communicate it back to the main form. So let's start with identifying the product. So to identify the product, we're actually going to use the same step we did here on line 43. We're simply going to take the combo box product.selected item, and we're going to create a variable called product or selected product, and we'll just capture it. So it's actually a pretty easy and straightforward piece, but that's still only within the context of our form. So next, we need to communicate an item or communicate the selected item. Now to do this, there's a lot of different ways that we can do it. We can do a raising of events, we can use shared properties, or we can use static properties that are shared in some sort of a utility class. And so since I've listed off 3 different options, the option I'm going to go with for today is going to be the most straightforward, where we have just a shared property or a public property on this form that the main form can see. So to do that, I'm going to create a public product, and I'm going to call it selected product. Now, since this form is just a class like any other class, I can add properties to that form by simply declaring a new property. And if I call it selected product, then I can, to communicate the selected item, I can say selected product equals selected product. Now that's kind of confusing, so I'm going to call this the SEL product instead. And since I typed over that existing variable, I get this little helper quick action. I can drop down and say I rename selected product to SEL product. If I click that, it'll actually do the rename for me throughout my code. So that's a nice little helper. So now we're taking this CBO product.selected item, putting it in the SEL product variable, and then we're taking that value and then we're passing it into the selected product property that's public that can then be seen by the main form. And then the final steps will be for us to say that dialog result. And if you remember me talking about the dialog result before, the dialog result is a value or a property that we can set to tell the parent form what ended up happening. And in this case, we're going to say that it was okay. And then we'll say this.close to close the form. And that is all that we will need to do for this form. So now we'll go back to the main form. And we'll jump back into the add item to order event handler. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to capture this dialog result. So we'll say dialog result, and I'm just going to call it dr. That'll be the name of my variable for the dialog result. And then we'll say if the dr equals dialog result okay, then we need to do all these steps. If it doesn't, then that means that we probably cancel it out of the box and there's no need for us to do any of these steps. So the first thing we need to do is add the selected item to the order. So that item will now exist inside of the add item form variable, because that form inside of that variable is the exact same form that we were interacting with. We've just changed perspective. We're now looking at that form through the lens of this variable instead of interacting with the form as itself. So now we can say add item form dot selected product. So this selected product is the selected product property that we created on the add item form itself. So if we come down here to the bottom, this property, if we go to references, it's pointing to the add item form selected product. So that is the product that we've created to add to our order. So we'll say product, SEL product again. And I just like to keep my variable names consistent, so that way I know, regardless of what context I'm in, whether I'm looking at form 1 or if I'm looking at the add item form, I know that I'm looking at the same variables. So now I'm going to say order.add or order.items.add new sales order item. And actually, let's break this into multiple pieces just so you can kind of see the dynamics of how this all fits together. So we'll say sales order item SOI equals new sales order item. This SOI dot product equals the selected product. And the SOI dot quantity equals, that's an interesting conundrum. So we actually don't want to get a product back. We want to get a sales order item back from the add item box. So because we need to also know what that quantity is. So what we need to do is we need to go back to the add to order form. And I'm going to change this property from a product to a sales order item. And then I'm going to call this the selected sales order item. So now when we scroll up here and we have SEL product equals selected product, this now needs to be the selected sales order item. And then we need to create a new sales order item with a capital O. And then the selected sales order item dot product will be the SEL product. And the selected sales order item dot quantity will be the value of txt quantity text. Now this is a string and this is an unsigned int, so I'm going to say u int. I'm going to do a parse and I'm going to parse it into an unsigned int. Now if this is not an unsigned int, we'll end up with an error, but for now we'll go ahead and keep moving with this, and then we'll talk about error handling in a later video. So we've now made that correction on the add item to order form. So now let's come back here, and this is no longer a selected product property. This is a selected order item. And then this will now also be, well, the sales order item, SOI, will just go right there. So we'll take that sales order item and we'll store it in SOI. And then adding it to the order, well, that'll be a cinch. So we simply just take the SOI and we add it to the order. Now to update the order total, there's a label in here, LBL total, and we'll say that equal to order dot. And for now, our calculate total is not built, but we can go ahead and build it. So we'll say calculate total in the sales tax here is 0.065 or 6.5%. And this is and then it's saying that this is going to generate a float. This wants a string, so we can use that string.format. Move my quotes around, and then we can actually just pass in this entire function call into string.format, and it will run the calculate total, take the output value, and then format it into a currency string. So that'll be nice. So let's jump into calculate total to finish things out. And right now, we actually do have it implemented. Is get sales tax implemented? It is not. So what we need here is we will return the get subtotal times the tax rate. It's actually pretty simple. So that'll calculate our sales tax. And then we take our subtotal plus our calculated tax, and that will be our calculated total. So let's go ahead and hit start. Let's see if this thing runs. All right, so let's start by adding an item to the order. We'll add a basketball. And that came out to be $33. Let's see here. This seems awfully high. Oh, that's my problem. My tax rate is far too high. My tax rate should actually be 0.065, not 65%. All right, so that's better. But I also noticed something else that did not happen. The order did not update in our order list. So what we need to do is, once we've added the sales order item and we've captured this data, these details, then we need to update the order list. So list order items dot data source equals order dot items. And for good measure, I'm going to do lst order items dot clear. Actually, we'll do dot items dot clear. So we'll empty out the items that are currently there, and then we'll add those items again. So we'll go ahead and run this one more time. And let's try it again. Basketball, add to order. And our sales order item does not have the toString overload, but our tax looks good. So let's add another item and then we'll go back and fix it. So beach ball for $5. Oh, we had an error. So we are not allowed to call items.clear when we use the data source property. So let's go ahead and remove that. And since we've already stopped, let's jump into sales order item. We'll go ahead and override toString, just as we did before. But here we're going to do things a little different. I'm going to use a string.format, and I'm actually going to format a string in 3 ways. We will have the quantity first, and then we'll do a tab, and then we'll have the product name, and then we'll do a space. Actually, let's do it this way. This will be product name first, and then the quantity, and then we'll do a space and the price. And then we'll do comma, and this will be product.name, comma, and then quantity, comma, product.unit price. We'll see how that turns out format-wise. So we'll add an item again. Basketball. There's one for 20. We may want to end up using a tab there. And then we'll add a baseball and add. And that's still not refreshing. So let's take one more look here. Let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to do lst order items.data source equals null, basically flushing it or clearing it out. And we'll see if that makes a difference. I'm also going to jump in here and add this additional tab just for the format. And let's see what happens. Add item to order, baseball. There we go. And we'll add the beach ball. Add. Much better. So there's our basketball for 20, our beach ball for 5, and there's our total with tax. So that's the upgrade of our quickie point of sale system, being able to add an item to the order, drop down, choose football, click add again, and be able to add additional items to our order and getting our total calculated with tax.